Open Market is sponsored by AdLib, the self-serve DSP solution making advertising easy. What do the world's largest demand-side platforms have in common? They're effective, but they require large annual contracts and spend minimums. With AdLib, growing agencies get a single platform that connects to every top global DSP with no contracts, no spend minimums, and G2's #1 ranked support. That means access to the entire universe of TV, digital out-of-home, audio, display, video, and native without a hassle and with no blind spots. It's incredibly easy to use, plus it can automate most of the work your team spends hours a day doing manually. Get the most powerful media buying technology without the barriers to entry. Check out AdLib at getadlib.com today.
Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and I'm joined by Crosshatch founder and CEO Soren Larson and Eric Franchi, who now wears glasses in an attempt to seem smarter.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Soren. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to the audience. Let the roast begin. I've always worn glasses, Joe. You know this. I
don't know that that's true. And these glasses are intense, okay? Like, they're like black all the way around. This is like, Eric's like, I'm not just a hunk who beats up men in my dojo gym. I also have serious looking glasses, and I am an ad tech intellectual.
Joe, did you start wearing your glasses before or after you got your PhD at Cornell?
I've always had glasses, but you know what? I got them when I was 12, and I was already the biggest nerd in my entire school. And then I got even nerdier, and it was completely untenable. So I had contacts until I was like 21. And then when I was about to go get my PhD, I was like, you know what? The charade never worked. I'm a huge fucking nerd. It's okay. Everyone can know. I'm just going to wear glasses.
Well, we'll let it split that. Maybe you restart wearing. Well, I'll leave the Cornell joke to the reader's imagination. Allow me to explain myself. I too have been wearing glasses since I was 12. And I have reached the point in life where I need two glasses. I need a pair for reading and I need a pair for distance. And these are the new readers, Joe.
Okay, it always comes back with us to intergenerational misunderstandings and learning and apprenticeship. So I'm glad we could share that.
That was pretty insensitive of you, Ashley.
Eric's about to call the HR department at Imperium on me. Eric's like, I'm being bullied in the workplace for my protected class.
Sir, great to see you. For the listeners who are not familiar with you and are not familiar with your biz, Crosshatch, why don't you just give us a little introduction about you and about what the biz does?
Yeah, definitely. So sort of funny to talk about this on an ad tech podcast, perhaps, because Crosshatch is building a new identity layer for personalization. We are different from, identity layers or identities that most ad tech vendors will sell, in the sense that, unlike our identity is consentful in the sense that it works in the following way. A publisher or a brand will drop our SDK on their site and invite users to log in. But instead of, say, that of the trade desk, we are AI forward. We allow users to log in with all of their data, all of their context, past purchases, their hotel reservations, their restaurant reservations, their exercise, their music listening history, their YouTube likes, everything. And once they do, the brand can then use that context to deliver a hyper-personalized experience. So far we've, I think CDP vendors have been telling the story that, if you just collect all of this first-party data, then you will be able to deliver personalization that consumers expect and reward. But it's been, I think, nearly a decade or over a decade since Segment launched. And I think it feels like we're all sort of like experiencing a CDP fatigue. That is, their expensive and first-party data is just not that good. And so we aim to resolve this problem by allowing the user to aggregate all of her data, bring it to her favorite apps, and unlock experiences that truly adapt to the user and anticipate user needs.
What's your background?
So unlike Joe, I went to Harvard. Okay, I'm just thinking about it. I can also say I have a liberal arts credit in the sense I went to Swarthmore for undergrad. So whatever, I studied music and math and economics. But I've worked in New York Tech for a decade, worked in ad tech actually at IAS. So I was on the fraud team. So I have some, Joe, if you ever want to talk shop on IAS fraud, I'm happy to. worked in finance, selling data flows to all the top hedge funds, and then actually, interestingly, ended up at Walmart under a former quant from Renaissance Technologies, where we attempted to put groceries on autopilot using Walmart's, God tier data. And what we found there was just even Walmart with its just incredible first party data. Like they have more data than anybody, and indeed you can see that. You might be able to see that in terms of their retail media business. Even despite Walmart's incredible data, we found that we couldn't save busy families time with all that data. And so I just felt like at the moment of we're at this incredible moment where Gen AI is increasingly powerful, increasingly cheap, but first party data is not the data layer that's going to deliver us like truly adaptive ads or experiences that anticipate user needs.
Did you go to Harvard after Swarthmore because you were sick of having gone to an elite school that only people who went to elite schools know is elite?
Sure. So I was actually going to become an economist. I stopped at Columbia, and I can say that my professors at Columbia I studied with the guy who wrote one of the books on stochastic calculus. It was quite extraordinary. So I guess I don't know if those are wounds, but my academic nonsense goes pretty deep.
I have a couple close friends who went to like fancy liberal arts schools, and I make fun of them for that because it's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, just no one knows unless they also like did that whole thing. So I think when a lot of people I'm glad you started with the commentary on first party data and your experience at Walmart, because I think there are a couple interesting ad tech trends and discussions that this touches on. One is that one of the major responses to the whole like privacy era we're in has been like, just collect first party data, right? And obviously that's challenging because like smaller organizations are not going to have enough data or they're not going to know what to do with it to make it meaningful. But I think where you are against the consensus, drawing from your personal experience at Walmart, is saying like, hey, I saw it at like the biggest retailer there is pretty much. And like actually even then, like just use your first party data doesn't really work. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about why that is. The other question I have is, I think when any ad tech person hears about Crosshatch, their first instinct is going to be like, never going to work because you need to get the consent of the consumer and that's impossible. And like consumers like hate everything we do. It's just really tough, like big uphill battle. So why don't you touch on the first party data thing and then the consumer consent piece?
Yeah. So I can actually share the experiment that we did at Walmart. It's super interesting. This was led by Mark Lurie, the guy who sold Jet.com to Walmart. Mark hired my boss, the former quant from Rentech. Those folks never leave, and so it's quite rare to get to work with such a quant. In terms of fancy pedigree, in terms of sort of quality of peers I was working with at Walmart, my boss had a PhD in astrophysics from Harvard, and my sort of colleague had a PhD in experimental physics from Cambridge. Like we were ready to put groceries and household goods on autopilot. And it's worth observing, yeah.
We had the best mind on these groceries.
I mean, like in the, yeah. Yeah.
This is all of ad tech in a nutshell, it's like, I love those memes where it's like, builders in the 1600s, I'm going to go to India and like hack the spice trade and like bring spices people have never had to the West. And it's like builders in 2024, and it's like a guy who like looks totally effed up, like a nerd whose like brain is spilling out of his head. And it's like, I'm going to build a ChatGPT wrapper that will allow software devs to increase efficiencies by 12%.
I mean, you can make that joke, but I mean, just honestly, I felt like what we were attempting was like both real and interesting in the sense that, we've long talked about this. I mean, I think as an industry, we've long talked about, personalization, anticipating our needs, just like we can just click a button and it'll just magically do all the things. We never got it. And I think, our hot take is the reason why no one has enough context. But with my attempt, our attempts at Walmart, like we were a very well positioned team to go do this. Like we had all of the data, the smart people to transform this data. And, I don't quite know what the outside perception of Walmart's tech stack is, but like we had visibility into every single online grocery order. And the data were very well organized. Walmart's tech stack was very good, super clean. And so, like, I think a really valuable outcome for Walmart would be able to allow customers to just say, let me forget about the groceries. I'm just going to click a button in Walmart just to remember what I need. I was also part of the team that shipped Walmart in-home. This was like the service that will actually deliver groceries directly into your fridge. Like we were on our way to some like really cool future. Look, I mean, indeed, I think your joke still stands, but this is like not like nonsense. Like if we succeeded, Walmart customers, Walmart might have succeeded in saving busy families time. And, I sort of, if you take this as like the pinnacle or a pinnacle of automation with data, brands providing, great value to customers that customers trust, like this is clearly a pinnacle of sort of, using customer data, activating customer data to deliver great value to both customers and brands. And in that context, we didn't succeed. We were only able to predict about half I can share more context. We did a test with 1,000 customers. They gave us their credit card. We predicted what orders they would want, the items in the order. We placed orders on their behalf, and they had 2 days to modify the card. And through this experiment, we just saw that we were only able to predict about half the basket with 70% precision. This is not enough. This doesn't satisfy the save more, live better mantra of Walmart. That's why it didn't get shipped. We attempted to use first-party data to its absolute max, like automate all the things, and we couldn't. And so the lesson I take is like, this was not if only you had tagged your data better, if only we had more data. This was like, this is the limit of first-party data. And the story of CDPs is, I think in question.
No, I mean, I think it's fascinating. It's a perfect position from which to tell the story, because I think in many ways, the story of Crosshatch is customer experience is broken, right? And the answer will be, you just need to maximize the value first party data. You need a CDP, or a data onboarding solution or whatever. And you have a great position from which to tell the story, because you're saying like, look, at Walmart, we had like the best data, we had the best tech, we had the best people, or at least very good on all three of those. We were very good on all three of those components, and it still didn't work. And the reason is because you need more context for the consumer, which is how Crosshatch was born, right? But then the challenge is you need the consumer to give you that. And so that was my second question, is just talk about that challenge and how you're overcoming it.
Totally. I mean, I think there are a few lenses to think through this. So, we're at the new year. Last year, I think one place to start talking about is in the context of AI. Like, I think a core theme, certainly for AI startups last year, was like enterprise with all of your data, like search, you can think of like the Gleans of the world or Rogo Data or Harveys of the world, like put AI on all of your data, whether it's, financial analysis, whether it's all of your Slack and Notion and Google Docs. Like this has been the writers of the world, Writer.com raised at a 2 billion valuation. All of these plays all center on AI with all of your data. And so what's been quite confusing about all of this is like, that's like, we've been seeing this like AI for all of your data narrative for enterprise, but it's been nowhere to be found for consumer. And even though it's clearly valuable, like, we're seeing like, this is the core narrative, AI and all of your data, but it's nowhere to be found for a consumer. And so it's pretty interesting too. Like, I don't know if you saw, Brian Chesky did an interview with Wired magazine at the end of last year. And he noted it's been 2 years since, at least I think this was in November. He noted it's been 2 years since ChatGPT launched. And he was doing this in front of an audience. He asked the audience, how many of your lives have changed? Like how many apps that you use in your daily life have actually changed as a result of the development of AI? And someone in the audience put up 0. They're like, my life hasn't changed at all. Our hot take on like why this is fundamentally because like AI on first party data alone is not interesting. It's like sort of all the candidate things that we might have done with, machine learning and first party data are mostly done. Like, we can build models on first party data. We can build better search, but like maybe we can build like generative interfaces we might have, but there's not that much to do. On the other hand, if a consumer can bring all of her context to her favorite apps, that's like a fundamental change. And I guess I would note too, but before getting into your question directly, we're already seeing, certainly on the developer side, certainly early protocols to enable consumers and developers, even businesses, to interface their data with AI applications. And I think maybe we'll get to this later, but it sure appears that all consumer applications, the Expedias, the Bookings, the Zillows, all of them are adding AI features to their consumer experiences. So I think it's fair to say that all of the consumer apps today are on their way to delivering AI experiences, or using AI services within the consumer experience, but they just don't have a means to link context. And so my sense is, while I think your critique is totally fair, like this clearly introduces friction, if you want to shift an experience that actually is contextual, actually can adapt to user needs because you have full context, not because you saw this person purchase this hotel this one time last year, but because that they always, stay, at the Edition in Madison Square Park, not just because they happen to book it that one time with you, but because you can see that full suite of purchases as a result, for example, of an email integration. I think, this is the only path there is. The consent is the only path there is to deliver this. And so, I don't know, my belief really follows from of course, Ari will get a shout out. Does Ari never not get a shout out? But, Ari had a conversation about, I think, on Marketecture about the logged in web last year. He noted, if cookies die, like the different, let's taking this from an ad tech angle, if cookies die and people aren't logged in, the difference in, I can't remember how Ari framed it, but the difference in ad prices among platforms that have logged in users versus not is just going to widen. And eventually, like Ari notes, this is a total pipe dream. But as ad prices adjust to platforms that have logged in users versus not, the economics of this might force this to happen. So I've said a lot, I'll pause, but that's my general take.
How are you facilitating this, or planning to facilitate it? So let's say it's me,
Sure.
And you want to ingest all of my data to improve the customer experience as I travel the internet. Like literally, what do you do?
This is a new pattern, but like one way to think about it is like we allow you to bring your AI agents to your favorite apps. I think that's sort of the most intuitive way to think about it. But practically, suppose you're on TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor adds our SDK. Our SDK appears like instead of the continue with Google button, it says continue with Crosshatch. You can create an account and log in with all of your data, your email, calendar, Fitbit, Strava, Apple Music, YouTube. You link that to a wallet. Indeed, I'm in Miami, but this is not a Web3 company. It sounds like one, but
Practically, you need a wallet to do this. I get it.
Yeah. TripAdvisor integrates by calling your AI agent with the ability to inject your context. And the nice thing about that is the AI agent pattern actually follows privacy law very nicely, in the sense that the data that's shared is reasonably necessary and proportionate. You're actually not sharing your underlying data with TripAdvisor. You're just sharing your AI agent's output as directed by TripAdvisor. So there are really nice privacy properties here. I think one way, if you want to talk about the privacy keys, although I understand privacy is no longer a hot topic in 2025, we're basically delivering the Apple style sharing patterns, share always or share while using, and only sharing with specific capabilities and sharing certain data, but to the open web. So Apple delivers sort of controlled sharing in iPhone. We believe that users should be able to wield their data safely wherever they are on the internet, not just in Apple's ecosystem.
Yep. One more product question, Joe, then I'll shut up. I just want to square the circle. What incentive do you provide, if any, to the user for doing this outside of, you're going to get probably better pricing, better offers, more relative stuff?
So we don't participate in that piece of it. We allow we let the brand manage the relationship with the customer. So they, and I think this, just generally follows like the, canonical loyalty. For example, I think Expedia did a big, indeed we declared last year, 2024 is the year of loyalty. And I think we were right. Expedia shipped Expedia One Key last year. My sense is, I think the TripAdvisor made note that logged in members were much more engaged than those that were not. And so I think like this follows the sort of a canonical path of like brands saying, hey, give us your email and we'll give you 10% off. How a brand says like, log in with Crosshatch and we'll give you 10% off. That's up to them to define. And I don't think we need to be involved.
Got it.
I think there are sort of, the way I'm thinking about it is in two different directions, right? There's like the brand to consumer direction, which is like the brand or retailer servicing Crosshatch. Like same way it used to be like, do you approve of cookies or whatever, except like there's a much deeper value proposition here, right? Like, do you want to use Crosshatch to bring in all this data and context, and then we'll give you a much better experience, better pricing, whatever it is. That is like the nearer term opportunity. And I think like ad tech people, for whatever it's worth, like that's probably the one they're going to like be able to sort of visualize or understand or say, yeah, that you might get that done in the next like few years. I think there's the deeper opportunity that no doubt is what you're most excited about, Soren, is that like, if you imagine a world, which obviously in the last year, people started talking about a lot more, where, as you said, everyone has their AI agent, the same way that we've started using, ChatGPT or Claude, where like we just go to it with all sorts of different problems, right? Like sometimes it's very intellectual stuff. Sometimes it's work stuff. Sometimes it's like, I'm having this problem with my car. Do you have any ideas? Like that way of interacting with AI seems to be a prelude. If Crosshatch could be a part of that, that is a way to envision like a much more comprehensive change here, and like Crosshatch playing a fundamental role in someone's like overall commercial activities.
Yeah, I mean, I think just generally our sense is that, I mean, I make joke about Miami, but in some ways, Crosshatch is sort of a libertarian sort of company in the sense that, we believe that consumers should be able to, take their data and point it into any application they want in a way they control. And so, our sense is that the brand experiences of the future are going to be entirely contextual. Users should be able to bring their context wherever they want. And, you might engage with TripAdvisor. And indeed, the boundary between your AI agent and application becomes blurrier. So I do believe applications have a strong reason to exist, even in this AI future. We can talk about like what is an application. I think it's rather interesting. But, I think too, we're, already seeing the sort of early efforts to allow users to, individual users to bring their data to AI. I don't know if you saw Perplexity at the end of last year, Perplexity made an acquisition of sort of a data linking startup as a service. And they acquired them, and I think they're shutting down that startup's activities to other startups to allow for users to link their Notion, Google Drive, Gmail, et cetera, so that Perplexity can sort of provide its service over this linked data. My understanding is that this is principally for business users, but clearly we're on this path of bringing our context to AI, and now that AI are starting to power every single application on the internet, there's no reason why that path shouldn't follow for every other app as well.
This is wild. You're painting a picture of a future that looks much, much different than, how we live life today and how we think about, everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you spent that much time talking. Joe, you joked about talking to Claude about like these asking you for help with your car, but I talked to Claude like quite a lot about like how to grill burgers. Does this thing I wrote make sense? I use Claude. I don't know if folks know Claude projects. It's a way to equip Claude with a bunch of, like maybe your past essays, your past conversations, and allows you to just jump into like a space with all available context. And so you can begin rolling without having to repeat yourself. I mean, I feel maybe I don't want to sort of, there's a New York Times article from 2005 referencing Lou Montulli, and Lou Montulli was the engineer at Netscape who created cookies. I highly recommend looking at the Lou Montulli patented the cookie definition. I highly recommend looking at it. It's like a fantastic piece of internet history. But the New York Times had a really elegant way of describing the internet pre-cookie. This was a moment when, if you went to an e-commerce store, I think this was in 1994 or 1995, you had to complete the checkout in a single session, or else the website would forget you. And so cookies were the way to solve this. And the way the New York Times described this, I thought was quite eloquent. They said that it was like visiting a shopkeeper who had amnesia. And my sense is today we're basically in like a new form of this where, we repeat ourselves. We tell a little bit about ourselves to one application, which is fundamentally using the same underlying AI calls. They're probably calling OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini. And we go to a new application where application doesn't have any memory of the things that we previously uttered. I mean, it feels like we're in, this is the same problem as cookies before. So indeed, I feel this is rather inevitable. I think there are open design questions for like the shape of this protocol. We're opinionated about ours, but this future does feel like it's coming.
Like the way I've started thinking about it as I use like ChatGPT quite a bit is that, well, one, it's really funny that ChatGPT kind of started in the like, it can write blog posts for me. Cause I think that's like really not like a particularly interesting use of it. But I think it's like,
and they're
the way,
and they're bad.
yeah, it sort of mimics the average writer, right? It's slop, optimizing for the average. So yeah, exactly, slop, which we can talk more about. But the way I really think about it is that it's an assistant. And it's like, and this was kind of the idea of Siri, you know, when Siri first started, but like it kind of sucked, right? The models are getting rapidly better, right? And so now I kind of think of it like I have tasks that I do. I have tasks that my real human, like admin / assistant does. And I have tasks that ChatGPT does. Some things ChatGPT is going to be better than my real human admin assistant at. Some things she's going to be better at. I think two ways to think about AI getting much better, though, as an assistant are one, what Soren was just talking about with it's essentially like stateful versus stateless, right? Like, is that an accurate way to put it, Soren? Is like, does it remember, you know, does it remember what's going on? Does it have an ongoing developing understanding of you and your context? And then the other thing is what you're working on at Crosshatch, which is, does it see across things, right? So does it not just see like what you're directly telling it, but does it see like your entire life and what you're doing across properties and apps and so on? And I agree that this is inevitable. Like, I think as AI gets better at both of those things, like understanding you and then understanding your full context, it'll just be able to work like a much smarter human assistant that like helps you in all these ways. I think for a company like Crosshatch, the question is almost like one of go to market. And it's the sense of like, how does this happen? Like, again, is it brand to consumer? Is it consumer to brand? Is there a tech company like OpenAI that is already interfacing with like hundreds of millions of consumers that Crosshatch then like partners or integrates with? And then you become part of my interactions with, you know, Claude or ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, I mean, with respect to sort of our strategy, I'm very much in the Keith Rabois school of startups. Choose I think I've memorized his quote, his pinned tweet that he's had up since I think 2016 at least. It says the biggest opportunities are those in fragmented markets with low NPS and vertically integrating them toward offering a simplified value proposition. In our sense, our context is fragmented across apps. You need somebody to pull it all together. And AI makes vertically integrating its activation simple in the sense that all you have to do is just add the context to the prompt. And AI has proven very good at activating it. Partnering with, you know, my sense of like why Crosshatch versus sort of an OpenAI, it's the same story as Walmart. You know, Walmart has probably arguably one of the best views into, you know, consumer discretionary and consumer staple spending, yet we weren't able to put groceries on autopilot. The same problems will apply to any major large lab. And then I'd say normatively, you know, I don't think that a large lab should own all of our context. That freaks me out. I think it needs to be an independent company. Ideally one that can create a protocol that's even user owned, which is something we're essentially working on now. But yeah, all of this partnership, like this go-to-market question is important. I can share, we're right now working on a playground to make it easier to use our API. But you know, our belief has just been that applications should be able to use any AI model that they want, and it should be able to interface with all consumer context. And so that's why it's helpful to be an aggregator over all context and all AI.
What do ads and ad tech look like in this world that you're talking about?
So for one, it's sort of funny. Like I've been really amused to seeing, for example, like the Lowe's of the world ship retail media, like big retail media now. Like it's crazy to me that like, you know, just some online purchases could drive like a huge retail media business. And so you can sort of imagine, well, if you link your data, like, you know, you can make a more relevant user experience, but, you know, what does relevant mean? It probably means, you know, both sort of aligned to the user's intent, but also perhaps aligned with the business interest. I've been so amused by like the narrative of Perplexity. When they started, they were like, you know, we're counterpositioned against Google. We're never going to have ads. And now they're selling ads. I think the latest narrative is that they're selling ads to AI agents, which I don't know if you saw Eric Subert's tweet, but I don't think it makes sense. But like, I mean, indeed, like I can share, like as indeed, I'm trying to get our sort of protocol out there. My sense is ads have like people are creating new things all the time, and there's like ads are a discovery mechanism. Like, how are you going to find it? Like, you think you're just going to know about all the things? Like, your AI agent is just going to be able to scrape the entire internet and find all the newest stuff that, like, no. I mean, I think this even well motivated from like the Netscapes of the world. I mean, when Netscape, so Lou Montulli, I guess I'm a fan of his. He did an interview 3 years ago, sort of describing the sort of the motivating story of Netscape, and at the time, they were competing with the MSNs and AOLs of the world who were envisioning an internet that was closed, where you had to pay to play, which is, and their sense was the way that you win is you have to create, if you want an open ecosystem to win, you have to create the economics and support it. And ads are those economics. So my sense is that ads will continue, and they'll probably be even more relevant than before, perhaps because they'll be operating on all of our context, not just some guesses based on fragments of things that we happened to do last year. And so my sense is like, it's been very interesting. On one hand, brands have, I think been taught, from a variety of places. I actually, I'll use the word blame that the Bill Gurleys of the world for this, but, I think a lot of brands have felt like their first party data is a principal competitive data asset. My sense from Walmart is that, well, actually that data asset is not that valuable. We're seeing increasing notes, for example, from Martin. I rather like Martin Casado. He wrote a piece in 2019 saying that data moats, like people have been long talking about, well, you need to collect more first-party data, which will deliver to you a data moat. Martin Casado noted in 2019 has since renewed his conviction of this, that data moats actually don't really exist, that they don't help, especially in the age of AI, that they're not going to help you build a better AI model than any of these top labs. But I think that if brands can get past the sort of baggage of first-party data, that they can embrace a world where users bring their data with them. My sense is retail media businesses will get even bigger because they'll actually be running on all of the context, not just, Home Depot happened to observe that you bought a lawnmower last summer. Like, what does that mean about the consumer? So I'm very excited about ads. I think that they'll become even more relevant and more aligned with user interests.
Yeah, I think to suppose that ads go away or become significantly less relevant in the world of AI agents is to suppose that the AI agent is almost operating entirely autonomously and that there's no sort of interplay with the human on behalf of whom they're operating. And I don't think that's true, right? I think like the human is still, it's an interplay. I don't think it's a replacement, and so the human like being influenced by ads like still remains very relevant. And I don't think it's impossible that, the AI agent is consuming information, are ads a part of that? That's kind of a separate thing. That's the Perplexity super thing that you were talking about. It's also worth thinking about, in an AI-inflected advertising ecosystem, the brands won't really be the ones driving the biggest change. Like, they sort of outsource it, like the big brands, right? They're sort of outsourcing it to an agency, which is sort of navigating it in collaboration, navigating the change then in collaboration with tech partners. Apropos of which, we just saw, Omnicom and IPG merging, where that's starting to happen. What do you think is the future of the big agencies in an AI-inflected advertising world?
My view is sort of entirely driven by sort of a gap around sort of AI progress. And, indeed, the sort of most sort of exciting models have been the reasoning models, the O1s, O3s of the world that have come out recently. And all of these are driven by the development of synthetic data and contexts that emit verifiers. Now, I don't know if you've noted, but the folks sort of anecdotally have noted that these O1, O3, these reasoning models, DeepSeek models, are very good in places where, or in contexts where questions emit verifiable answers. So math, coding, maybe medicine. But a place where they haven't done so well has been in creative writing, or places where there's quite a bit of judgment or discernment, or if we are going to call the Silicon Valley style, those involving taste. And so my sense of the place for the agency is rather in the place that AI is just probably going to be bad at forever, or poised to face serious challenges in its development, namely in domains that involve taste. So My sense, indeed, I've seen, we heard Sir Martin Sorrell say that, or note that agencies are saying that they're devoting $100 million to AI and noting like, what does this mean? Like, where is this money going? What is this for? My sense is that it is not worth agency time to go try to develop like proprietary models. We saw Bloomberg, who's, quite technical, developed Bloomberg GPT last year, only to have GPT-4 wipe it out. I think if you're going to make a bet in the AI space, you need to be sure that you actually have a defensible position. My sense is, I don't know, I suppose it depends upon the assets that an agency has, but that seems unlikely. Rather, my bet is that the future of the agency is the return of Mad Men. That agencies should lean into taste, places that AI cannot readily compete.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? It's like all you need to do is look at the numbers to get a sense of why it's going to be difficult for holding companies to compete on AI. Like they're investing, let's say $100 million, like Meta and Amazon and et cetera are investing 50 to 100 billion. So it's like, good luck. It's like their potential advantage could be their focus on advertising and marketing. Like hypothetically, that would be the thesis. I think it would be that they are the ones who understand advertising and marketing particularly well, and they'll be exclusively focused on that. Whereas, all the big tech companies who are investing, tens or hundreds of billions of dollars into this, they're looking into all sorts of things, right? And so maybe there's some sort of advantage there, but also, all these companies have huge advertising businesses now. So, and also there's like the generalizable applications of AI that would lead you to think that that's unlikely.
Yeah, like, look, I'm not going to, at the same time, we're also seeing consulting businesses do huge numbers. It seems I saw a note last year that consulting businesses might even have generated more profit. I don't know if it's a top line or bottom line number, but more profit than OpenAI itself. It seems like there's lots of money to be made in helping people apply AI to their business. How durable that revenue is TBD. But, I perhaps this is a taste question, but if I were running an agency, and I were responsible for making a sort of a big investments in terms of company direction, I would be quite wary of a feeling of oh well, maybe just they won't be focused on this. I would wish to decide it from first principles. If we're involved in media planning and buying, that is making sort of media buying decisions, based on sort of empirical metrics, like all of that stuff is verifiable in the sense that you can make a decision, you can get measurement after the fact, you can decide. Perhaps you won't be able to decide it entirely counterfactual from a true counterfactual perspective, but you'll basically be able to say this is a good decision or a bad decision. You can bet that like this sort of stuff is stuff that AI is very good at both generating synthetic data for and training itself on. Indeed, even Sir Martin Sorrell was like, do we really think that 250 or 300,000 people are going to be involved in media buying in 5 to 10 years? I think he even made the note that BlackRock has doesn't use or stitch together spreadsheets to make decisions. They have algorithms do it. Surely the same thing could happen for media buying, particularly for the success of like the PMax or Facebook Advantage Plus in recent years.
Yeah, especially when we think about the large holdcos specific to media planning and buying, and hundreds of thousands of people that do those jobs. That's where a lot of their revenue comes from. These are headcount based revenue models. So when you're so heavy in headcount that takes care of things that are, to use your phrase, verifiable, it can be done likely better and infinitely lower cost using AI. Like, what do you do? And I think, to your point, right, the return of the Mad Men seems to be, and the Mad Women seems to be the right idea, but is not consistent with their business models today. So it seems to be like, yeah, the agency of the future probably isn't a holdco. The holdco model is based on scale, it's based on people, it's based on buying power. When all of that stuff is verifiable, what do you do?
I'm reminded. There's this. I can link them after this, but there's this TikTok creator I very much like. I think I might have sent it to you, but he made it. Like I think there's been this sort of interesting question of. I think certainly that was discussed last year. We saw with like the sort of the failure of Nike's focus on performance marketing. Should we spend money on brand versus performance? Indeed, I didn't do a deep dive into the nature of the study, but. I think TikTok did this in collaboration with an analytics startup, but they found that performance marketing, I think, is like nearly 3x more valuable or more accretive the more brand resonant your brand is. And so, like, I think, like, AI is producing barbells literally everywhere. So when I say barbell, I'm referring to, like, in the most familiar form for me is in finance. In finance, there's like the D Shaws of the Renaissance that are charging 4 and 44, 3 and 30, whatever. And then there are like the index funds that are super cheap. You can imagine in advertising, a similar form could come up where there's, the madmen, spending most of their time on brand, building really rich brand narratives that make performance marketing nearly entirely managed by AI more creative. Yeah, I think that's why I'd be pretty excited about I can imagine a Holdco could still be relevant. I have less context on their construction, but, perhaps, brand building goes to, more on the ground activations where brand building goes to more to brand construction and ops, like activations, like sort of wild, deeply human, but operationally heavy work. And in that case, that could involve a lot of people still.
I kind of see three components of it to tease out of what Soren's saying. Like, one is the Mad Men thing. So it's what agencies do in the AI era. They double down on the things that they're uniquely able to deliver, right? And so that would be the creative and strategy stuff, building brands. The second thing is the role the agencies have traditionally played in relation to ad tech is they're like the ad tech whisperers for the brands, right? They're the ones who help brands understand what's going on, and we're going to be using these tools and we should be using them. Here's what the stack looks like and all of that stuff. And you mentioned, Soren, that's kind of like the role that like the consulting ecosystem plays with cloud stuff, right? Like you have like Accenture, like having a huge business of just like implementing cloud solutions. So that's familiar. And then the third thing is, that they'll be able to use AI themselves to make their businesses drastically more efficient, you would think. And so there's relevancy there as well for their financial future. Like, as Eric pointed out, there are going to be some challenges in terms of squeezing, revenue out of headcount, but they'll have to rethink that, I think. And they'll ultimately probably transform in ways that make the revenue they generate less tied to just like throwing people at the problem, and that also allow them to harvest the benefits of not needing so many people themselves to get stuff done. Soren, you've been talking to a lot of brands and retailers, I think, to move Crosshatch forward. So what are you hearing from them in terms of where are they optimistic about AI and sort of where do they want to lean in, and what are some of the concerns?
So I think maybe there are three things, or two things on the optimism side. One, there's like an expectation from all shareholders that you better have an AI strategy. I don't know if this is optimism per se, but everyone is certainly engaged certainly on the experimentation side. I think Sir Martin Sorrell described sort of the evolution as wow, how now, characterizing in 2023 we were in sort of the wow era. Last year we were in the how era, and now we're sort of in the now era. Like people are actually putting stuff into production. I'd say like folks are very excited about how generative AI delivers better user experiences that increase engagement and spend. TripAdvisor has reported in their earnings that they're seeing folks that use their AI trip planner to spend more time, return more often, and spend more money. Like that's been quite positive. You can also say that one area that's been super exciting has been on the economic side. I think a lot of people, when generative AI came out, were quite concerned about cost. So far, all of the user experiences that we experience in the consumer internet are basically paid for by our conversions. And so far that's been fine because the cloud services that these consumer experiences run on, even the ad servers run on, are quite cheap to run on the margin. Generative AI is not, can start to cost real money. But what's been super exciting is that for GPT-4 class models, since GPT-4 I think came out in just under 2 years ago, the price of GPT-4 level intelligence has fallen over 240x since it came out. This intelligence too cheap to meter, that is where these AI models are starting to approach, cloud level costs, is really nice because it means that we can start to implement AI in much more expressive use cases without being concerned about like how this affects, even tight brand profit margins. On the concern side, I think folks are still trying to figure out how to execute generative AI. I think there are folks like, we're all familiar with the ChatGPT interface, but there are definitely other implementation opportunities. For example, in generative UI that morph according to the user context. I haven't really seen any such example yet. My hot take is we haven't, because there's no context off of which to generate anything. Users need to bring their context in order to make that relevant. And also quite excited about proactive AI that can anticipate needs. But of course, that only happens if it has real access to context. So yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing sort of a mix of both, but the excitement level, certainly at the C-suite, Glenn Fogel from Bookings said in a report 2 months ago, he wants to deliver like the travel agent experience that we had pre-internet, the one where people, they know our families, they know everything about us, and they're actually able to anticipate our needs. He wants to use AI to do that. Now, of course, there are interesting privacy and security implications. Glenn Fogel literally was quoted saying, "I want to know everything about you." I mean, do we want the Walmarts of the world or the booking holdings of the world like having a live stream into everything we're possibly doing? I think that's a real challenge. That's something that we're working to help resolve.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
I think so. Yeah, Soren, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us from sunny Miami. I'm signing off from foggy Los Angeles, and Eric is in a gray box where they put the fake nerds with the glasses. They learn there to play and study independently, and then they let them out and they go back and shine in like the recess environments from which they hail.
Joe, do you spend much time in LA? I must say, I was just in LA, and I feel like I was lied to about the nature of LA. I feel like as a New Yorker, I was told that if you're tired of the cold, you should move to LA. But LA was freezing when I was there, and I'm wondering if
that's it's hilarious, and you'll appreciate this, Soren, as a former New Yorker and now big Miami guy. I met the owner of this house I'm staying in last year this time, and when I told him I wanted to spend the entire month of January in LA, he was like, he knew I was coming from New York, and he was like, it's not like Miami, right? He was just like used to New Yorkers, because that's the thing. New Yorkers are like Southern California is 80 degrees and sunny every day. And yeah, it's not. I mean, in January, you get some days that are like very foggy, like 65, and it's like, it's not super hot, but it's still a lot better than New York, though not critically for Soren, as nice as Miami.
And it's not as nice as Miami. I feel like the only option for New York is Miami Beach, as far as I'm concerned.
Be great.
Soren is a huge Miami booster.
Soren, where can people learn more about you and about Crosshatch?
Sure. I'm at Hyper Soren on Twitter, on X, crosshatch.io, and hit me up at soren@crosshatch.io if you want to learn more.
Soren, this has been great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Leave us a 5-star review. There are 200 of you out there. I know you're 4 of you leave reviews. You got to give me some reviews. Come on, guys. And till next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.